Welcome to an enlightened hour of interactive talk. This is Guided Spirit Conversations with host Marla Goldberg. In this program, we spotlight guests from all over the globe who have helped others change their lives and will provide you with the tips, tools, and techniques that you need to help you make a difference in your own life. Now, here is Marla Goldberg.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Guided Spirit Conversations. I'm Marla Goldberg, and I'm so happy you're here with us today. And we are going to have an amazing conversation with my guest, Endre Balogh. Endre has performed as a soloist with orchestras like the Berlin Philharmonic, Frankfurt Symphony, and orchestras of Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Seattle, and Dallas, to name a few. He's toured the world as a violinist of the Pacific Trio for 35 years. He is an award-winning photographer and digital artist, and in 2016, he was named number 2 among the top 10 photographers in California. It's quite an honor by the Professional Photographers Association of California. Endre is renowned throughout the world for his sacred geometry artworks, which is what we're going to be talking about. And if you want to tune in and look at his art while we're talking, you can find his artwork at Endres Art, and that's ENDRESART.com. Welcome, Endre.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
So happy to have you here. We have so much to talk about because you've got such a diverse background, professional background, and you started really young in your music career.
Right. Yeah. Well, I was actually born into it. My mother was a violinist with the Los Angeles Philharmonic, which back in those days was very rare. I think she was one of the first women in any orchestra, and so for those feminists in the world, that was a big step forward. And my uncle was a violin maker, and so when my father, who came from Europe long after the war, he didn't speak English. Both of my parents are Hungarian, and he didn't speak English.
Hungarian.
Oh well, see, there we go. So kindred spirits. And so anyhow, he didn't speak. But he played the violin. He's not a violinist. But then he needed to get strings for his violin, so he didn't speak English well. So he asked around in the Hungarian community, and they said, "Oh, there's this violin shop where the proprietor is Hungarian, and you can then speak with him." So he went there, and that's where he met my mom. And so that was the basis of how they got married, and or at least how they met. And then because it was unusual that there was a woman in the Los Angeles Philharmonic, when I was born, and I was 11 days old, I had my picture in the Los Angeles Times with a little tiny 64th size violin that she was holding under my chin in the bassinet. And they said, "Here is a new violinist is just born." Of course, that was just, they thought that would be cute, but they were actually correct in their prognostications. Probably the first and only time the LA Times has been prophetic. So anyway, so then when I was about 3.5, there's a long story that I won't go into. They didn't actually want me to play the violin, but things worked out differently, and so I wound up around age 3.5 starting the violin, and by the time I was 4, I played 9 concerts in public. When I was 4, and then the first time I played as a soloist with an orchestra, I was 6 years old, and then the first time I played with the LA Philharmonic as a soloist, I was 8, and then I gave my recital in New York, my debut recital in New York when I was 15, I was 16. In Los Angeles, I was 15, and then 16 in New York, and then started concertizing and playing with various symphonies, and then I fell in love with chamber music as well, and so I had wonderful colleagues, and so we had the Pacific Trio. We toured around, and I always was playing recitals as well, but so we toured a lot and played a lot of concerts that way, and then of course I got married and had children, and I wanted to stay closer to home because I'd be gone about 6 or 8 months of the year, and I didn't want to have to be doing that as much, so I started to decide to stay at home more and limit my concert schedule. And so that's when I got introduced to, or became interested in photography, and then also digital artwork, and so that led eventually. That's a whole separate story how I started to make sacred geometries, but then we'll probably get to that. And so then now I make a lot of photography. I do a lot of art photography and also sacred geometry. So
I've checked up on you. Your photography is amazing. Your sacred geometry is just awe-inspiring.
oh, thank
And
you.
one of your designs is
One
sitting
of
right
those is
behind you
behind me,
right
right?
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is just like, wow. So I have to tell you, I had to hone up on my sacred geometry information because there was never, out of all the training I've had, sacred geometry has not been my strong suit.
Uh,
So, I mean, it's
that's
beautiful.
okay.
I love to look at it. But no, I wanted to bone up so I could speak into, with some intelligence with you. But let's talk about how you got into sacred geometry and how you go about designing, how you get your
Well,
ideas.
okay. So I was always interested in philosophy and religions, theology, and all of this. This was always a passion of mine, even from way back when. When I was a little kid, I was a strange child. I'd be practicing the violin and then be interested in reading esoteric books, and so actually the first of all, I got into photography, digital photography, and I was doing that, and of course, learning to do Photoshop, because all of my sacred geometries are made in Photoshop, and then unfortunately, it's about 15 years ago now, our son passed away suddenly, and so we have 4 children, and so I have 3 girls and our son who passed away, and so kind of as a self medication, self-therapy, I started to make these sacred geometries. And the first ones were very nice. People liked them. If I look back at them, I can see that they were a little more primitive perhaps, but they're still there. And I have them on my website. They're all in order that they were created. And so there is sort of a progression as to how they've been created. Right now, I just made last night, I finished number 556. So that's...
Wow.
And now I believe in some way that my son, to the extent that I get channel, I don't feel myself to be a channel, other than somehow I just these happen somehow, but he does help me, and I can't say that I am whispered in my ear, but there is a process to it, and I find that they sort of make themselves. Very often I'll start with, what I do is I start with a blank square, big blank square, and then start to fool around with it, and it's interesting because they start out often, like even the one last night started out with a completely different beginning, and then I start to make I make the center first generally, and then I start to make the background, and then I realized that I didn't like the center, but I loved the background, and so then I started fooling around with creating something else, and so it wound up with completely different from what I started with, but then suddenly I say, oh, now it's done. And so that it's that kind of a process, and it's a meditative process for me. I just sort of zone into it, and they seem to create themselves in many ways, and so a lot of people have told me that they're like portals into other realms, and so I'm really honored that I'm able to channel that into the world to the extent that I feel that I'm channeling them, and they've also in many ways acted like a beacon to attract into my life a lot of fascinating people like yourself, who appreciate that type of genre of art, and well, as you can well imagine, people who do appreciate that are always special, interesting people, and so that's why I've met a lot of wonderful people that way.
So I'm hearing that you're a channel in a different kind of a way because you have to be open to receiving the guidance to know what you like, what you don't like.
Right,
It's not
exactly.
always
Yeah.
ego.
No. I mean, I actually. It's interesting. One of my daughters was over here the other day, and I was showing her my most recent ones, and she says, "How do you do this? Every one of them is different, and and you keep making new ones." I say, "Well, I don't know. I just keep making new ones, and I'll listen to the radio. I might be listening to something that has nothing to do with sacred geometry. I mean, although I've done that too, where I've had meditative music. There's actually a whole bunch of them that I did with some friends of ours were very much into kirtan meditation. I don't know if you did. That's what the Sikhs do, and they have a whole bunch of different mantras, and they're set to music, and some of them are really lovely. And so one of them suggested to me that, well, why don't you play that while you're making them and see if that makes any difference? And then it was interesting there because I didn't know anything. They're singing in Indian language, and I purposefully didn't want to know what was the meaning of those particular mantras. And then I would show them to them. They say, "Oh, that's amazing because this is associates to so and so guru, and his colors were green and blue, and it would happen that one was made with predominantly green and blue." It was this very mystical sort of stuff that would happen, and so. But as it is, I mean, I listen to anything that just takes me away from myself. Then I allow the process to happen, and they form themselves. Sometimes it takes me 15 minutes or so to make one. Other times it'll take me several days before I'm happy with it.
But here's the thing: music is vibration, right? So when you put the music on, raises the vibration.
Yeah.
No coincidence that blue and green were in that piece you made while listening to the music.
Right.
The mantra.
It had that vibration in it. Exactly. So yeah.
Absolutely. So
I mean, it's not surprising. I'm just relating what seems to be for many people would be a fascinating and almost mystical process, and I find it to be very, very. It's just something that I do. Thank God. I mean, I'm able to allow this channel to happen, and so yeah.
So it's not mystical because it's your process. So there's no mysticism around it, but to the outside eye. Or who's wanting to know how you do this, like what your daughter asked you, right? Like, oh my God, each one is different and it's so powerful. And how do you do this? And you do it because you're that vessel, in that way. That's why they're a channel that can, channel Jesus and other deities. And I mean, look at Abraham Hicks. Abraham is a collective of entities sharing information. Well, to Esther Hicks, it doesn't seem all that mysterious, but to somebody outside who is not familiar, it's highly mysterious.
Exactly. So
and it's a true gift, I have to say, because they're gorgeous. So, does your artwork now? I listened to your Danny Boy with your photography, that video that was beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Did you take those pictures of the flowers?
Yes, those are all my flower photos. Those are some of my award-winning flower photos, and so people, your listeners can all go to my website and see all the flowers and the sacred geometries, everything. But I selected about, I don't know, I could count them, maybe about 40 to go with that music, and so that was a live performance that was recorded as part of a radio broadcast that was for the 10th anniversary of 9/11.
There was it just pulled on the heartstrings. And so you have a YouTube channel that has this.
Right.
Because it's on YouTube. So you can look up Endre Balogh and see a lot of his music and his meditation.
Yeah, that particular one, I think if you put on YouTube, what does it say? It's I think if you just were to put in Endre Balogh and Danny Boy, or Danny Boy and Flowers in my name, that would bring that up. So,
and I urge everyone to listen to it and watch it, because the flowers, the lighting. I was looking at the lighting and the contrast and the texture, and it was incredible. And of course, Danny Boy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's actually also, we're going back to the son who passed away, that I had never played that piece, but I did a lot of performing with a guitarist colleague of mine who also has since passed away. He was my closest friend, and it was probably the first thing that we learned where we put together. He did an arrangement of Danny Boy for the guitar, and I played the violin part, played the melody, and then he had passed away, and so all that's left is that I play it by myself, and so that's what that recording was done.
It still hits the heart in such an amazing way. At least it did for my heart. So
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. So you said you've made 500. I thought it was
No, it's now. I just finished last night 856.
okay.
Yeah,
That's
there's about
500.
800. There's over 800 that are now on my website. I haven't. I sort of parse them out, and whenever because I don't want to. I could put them all up at once, and then people would get, if there were too many of them. So I put up a new one every couple days, and I'm backlogged, and I forget what the last number is up there but
I saw 847 when I looked yesterday.
Okay,
But,
well, so there we are. But yeah. So there's some that are sort of somewhat color change duplicates, and I will label them maybe 127 number one, 127 number two, for instance. And so there's more than one of a certain type sometimes. But that's fairly rare.
So it's almost like the same design, but with different color behind it.
Yeah,
or
yeah. I
different
mean, there might
texture?
be that I can't decide which one I like better, and so I put them both up.
I like that. It's what I do when I buy shoes. I can't decide which ones I like, so I take them off.
Yeah. Right.
My shoe analogy. So
That's what supports you. So
it does literally,
yeah,
holds you up.
that's what I meant.
So now you have those. So what do you do with them? So you put them up, you've got them up for people to see and buy, and they can buy them in posters. They could buy them on.
Oh, well, from my website, they can be bought in any configuration. There's all kinds of. My website is run by a company called Fine Art America, and so then everything is produced on demand. So if somebody goes to my website and purchases a sacred geometry or a photo, there's virtually infinite number of ways that they can be processed. They can buy them as shower curtains or bed covers or of course prints, posters, matted prints, and you can choose the matting and the framing and anything else that people want to do.
And now you have masks.
Well, right, and so then you can also, now they're making face masks, and so you can buy a sacred geometry face mask, and that's also on my website. So any one of those is available to me. Actually, I bought one for myself, so I'm advertising myself when I go out somewhere, and I have my sacred
Which you
geometry
should.
face mask.
And just think, you'll have one for each day if you buy one in each design, right?
Right.
We're going to be right back. We have to take a break. We're going to talk more with Endre Balogh and his sacred geometry and his processes. Stay tuned.
Right.
All right, great job. We're all clear. Back in a couple.
Perfect. Thank you. Wow, that was good.
Great,
Now
yeah.
I have to go get a mask
Yeah.
or two to fill my wall that I plan on putting your designs up. Seriously, they've just, I've never seen designs that pulled on me the way your designs pull on me.
Oh, thank you. That's an honor.
So I have a wall where we've just moved down here. And so I have a wall that's going to be my meditation room. And I just would love to have that wall covered with different sacred geometry because they're all so powerful.
Well, great. Thank you. Actually, if you want, I can. There are other ways of doing it. If you want to have a framed version, or I don't know if you want them framed or if you want them just to be on the wall, because there's ways of doing that. I can send that through my other printing company, and then you and I can figure it out. Probably be cheaper, and I can get you more of them, and it depends on how you want to do it. So
I would love it. Let's talk after.
Because Fine Art America does, they have their markups and everything, and so I can probably do better than that.
Everyone does.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to do it framed. I love those simple black frames, because that way when I go in there and meditate, I'll have a different vision to look at it.
They can also be done in what's called a standout, which is just the piece, and it hangs by itself against the wall. You don't need a frame or anything.
Really?
And yeah, it's very easy. You just put two nails in the wall, and you can hook. There are two holes, and you can hook it right onto that, and then you can put them out however you want, and they're just against the wall, and it's on a foam backing, and it just stays solid against the wall. It's just, they look terrific.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, but that comes from my other website. So, or I mean, I have to do that through and I can have it drop shipped straight away to you if you want. So.
Perfect.
Yeah.
As long as it's not as big as the delivery I got just a few minutes ago.
Oh.
It's just like 11 or 12 feet long, something
Oh.
like that.
Lots of shoes.
Yeah, I wish they were all shoes, but it's a paddleboard, so
Uh,
I'm gonna have more exercise.
Good for you.
All
That's
right,
good.
sorry to interrupt, but we're just about to come back.
Thanks.
You are listening to Guided Spirit Conversations. To reach Marla Goldberg or her guest today, you're invited to call into the program at 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. If you'd rather send an email, the address is guidedspiritconversations@gmail.com. Now, back to this week's program.
Hello, welcome back. Thank you for sticking around. If you've watched this or listened to this from the beginning, if you've just tuned in, I'm sitting and talking with Endre Balogh. Endre is a soloist with orchestras like the Berlin Philharmonic, Frankfurt Symphony, and orchestras of Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Seattle, Dallas, just to name a few. And he has traveled the world as a violinist with the Pacific Trio for 35 years. Endre is also an award-winning photographer and digital artist. He was named #2 among the top 10 photographers of California by the Professional Photographers Association of California. And Endre is renowned throughout the world for his sacred geometry artworks, which is what we were talking about before the break. So welcome back, Endre.
Yeah, welcome. It's great to be here.
So you also collaborate with a lot of people. You've done a book with Deirdre Haid and William Arnst. Will Arnst.
Right.
And it's called The Not So Little Book of Surprises.
Right. Yeah.
So let's talk about that book a little bit.
Well, that was a fascinating project. Will Arnst, some of you may be familiar with him, that he was the producer and director of a very well-known documentary movie that was very popular called What the Bleep Do We Know? And so that was several years ago. I think it was about 10 or 12 years ago that came out.
I think it came out in 2005 or 2004.
I don't know. Whatever. Anyhow, so he and then he married Deirdre Haid, who is a fascinating channel of spiritual enlightenment and wisdom, and she gives a lot of lectures and she talks to a lot of people, and so from all of that, they had collected a number of her poems and wisdom sayings that she had channeled through, and so then he got the idea that he wanted to do. It actually started out just as to be like a little thing for her birthday, a little pamphlet that they would collect together some of her sayings, and then I would use some of my photographs to illustrate that. And she thought it was so great, and then it eventually morphed into a 136 page, or is it 126 page coffee table book called The Not So Little Book of Surprises. I don't know if anybody who's watching it, they can see it there. I'll hold it up for a second.
It's lovely.
There it is, and it's available on Amazon. And every page of it has artwork of mine, including the cover and the photographs in the back of Will and Deirdre, and every illustration in the book and every page is illustrated with a different illustration. So it's basically a big portfolio of some of my artwork, some quite a number of which I made specifically for the book. I wound up creating things specifically for the book, and because the sayings and writings that she had then would inspire me to create something new, and so those are in the book. And then actually it's a very interesting story, is because when it was about to be published, one of the processes that people do with publishing is that you go to a place where they show you the photographs and under special lights, and so you can see how the color is to make sure the color is corrected and everything. And so doing that, the publisher people said, this book is so beautiful, we love it so much, we want to make sure that it's going to be one of our special sort of gem photo books that we can show to people. And so they paid for me to come with another fellow, the two of us. We flew to China, where they printed the books, and so I oversaw the printing of each page. We would basically, what happened was I was there for 10 days, and they would print 4 pages at a time, and they would have a test page after they color corrected everything. They would do a test page, and then we would go and again under the same special lights. We would look at them, analyze them, make sure that there were no little. One time I found a little blip that had gotten onto a photo that turned out to be some dirt that had gotten onto the press thing. No one would have seen it except I know my photos well enough to say, oh wait a minute, that doesn't belong there. And so they printed 25,000 copies. It would have been in every one of them. So I said, wait, that's wrong, and so they fixed it and they cleaned that off the thing. So that's how the book was printed and put together in China, and so it was, and that resulted, of course, and I got to take a lot of photographs in China too. So in that area where I was, so on my website there's some interesting photos of China.
China is fascinating. My husband's gone there quite a bit. I haven't gone yet. I've chosen not to.
Now things are changing, so it's
it's changing a lot. And you also are working on a current book with Ness Carroll. Is that the right?
Ness Carroll, right? Well,
perfect.
Yeah. So she is an extraordinary channel of spirit, and her what. It's very interesting. Right now, we're actually expanding that book into other areas. We have a book called Synergeometry. It's going to be. We don't know exactly how it's going to get published yet, although we're thinking of doing it ourselves, and then maybe setting up a crowdfunding campaign, and I can let you know about that when that happens.
Perfect.
But she has channeled 4-line little poems that go with each of these sacred geometries, and that's about 140 of them. And so, but now it's interesting because I'm working on it right now, and she is too. She's channeling a new little poem for each one of the 800 so far, and she reports to me. It's so fascinating because she says, I don't even. All I do is look at it. And my hand is writing, and I'm not even writing. It's all automatic writing. She says it's done. They'll be done in 45, 50 seconds, and they're finished. The next one, and it's just being downloaded from some divine source. So those will eventually be. They're divided into sections. There's portals and mandalas and geometrics and pyramids. I think that's 4. Maybe there's a 5th one, but they will make various meditation cards and various meditation, all kinds of different things. That's the idea. Spirit has told her that this is what's going to happen, and so we're busily working away. I have to lay them all out. She sends me the text of each one, and then I lay them out, and so for whenever they get done, it'll be done. So it's going to be a long process though, because doing that for, well, it's now, we had already done 150 of them for the Synergeometry book, but they will be if I have 850 of them or 1,000. My goal is to eventually to make 1,000. I feel that there's going to be 1,000 of them, and so when I don't know what I'll do when I get to 1,000, but so that's what's happening. So we're in the process of that.
So just so I understand, each of the current drawings that you now have, she is putting a little poem to each. There's a
little poem that I'd have to find an example for you.
Are you going to then put that separate from just, if people give them an option, you can buy the sacred geometry or sacred.
Oh yes, I mean they're entirely separate. They wouldn't go together.
Oh, they wouldn't. You wouldn't put overlay one onto the drawing so they could, see a line or maybe meditate on whatever the message was
Right. Well, that's what that part would be, and they would be meditation, and they would stimulate the brain through the. But they're very poetic, and they rhyme, and it's quite amazing. I mean, if she's doing them in 45 seconds each, it's just like they're being downloaded to her, and so. I without seeing them, it's hard for me to. I wouldn't want to read one to you, and because you wouldn't see what it goes with. But they do go specifically with each sacred geometry. And they're based on whatever is there. So she's an amazing person, and I think maybe one day you'll be able to interview her on your show here. And she's terrific. You'll get a kick out of her. So
I'm going to reach out.
Uh-huh.
So I just, I saw, actually, a mutual friend showed me a couple of pictures. They were, there was whatever site whatever. Yeah, they were amazing. I thought they were phenomenal.
Well, they're very powerful. By the time the combination of the words and the sacred geometry, it's really quite wonderful. So I'm looking forward to getting it all done.
And so you want to self-publish rather than find a publisher to work
Well,
with you.
yeah, unless there's a publisher out there who's interested in doing it. So I mean, we're open to everything. So
I heard a name, so I'll let you know off air
Okay.
what I heard. And
terrific.
What's the
Good.
worst thing anybody can say is sorry, not our thing.
Exactly.
But if it says, "Wow, this is great. This is just what we need,"
All right. Then
it
we're
works
in
well,
business.
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, what other projects are you working on?
Well, I mean, I always am doing new photography. I do one of the other things that you mentioned was with the flower photos. So I kind of still gravitate toward doing flowers, although I sort of ran out because I wanted to have one photo of each type of flower that I could find, and so I would go to my local florist, and they got to know me, and they'd say, "Oh, we got some unusual flower," and then I would buy the best version I could find of any particular of that flower. So I have, I've got several hundred flower photos on my website, and then I do them in various configurations. So they're often either with the ones you saw there had black backgrounds, but then I shoot them on white backgrounds. I shoot them sometimes with like might use the same photo and extract it off the black background and put it onto a textured background. And so they all there. I have lots and lots of flowers, and right now I belong to the Professional Photographers Association, and they have their local chapter, which is for me the Channel Islands Professional Photographers. So they just asked me a couple days ago to do a lecture demonstration for the other photographers on how I do my flower photos and how I set them up and then how I process them and all of that. So it's very nice of them. And one of the members says, "Well, gee, why don't you get Endre to do a flower?" And I said, "Oh, okay, fine." So
You're going to do that.
I'm going to do that probably next week. So.
And I love the fact that you're willing to share the process.
Well,
there are a lot of
I mean,
people that think
we're
it's
all
secret.
enjoying each other's work as photographers. So I can give them tips, they give me tips, and we all learn from each other.
I love that attitude. Not everybody has that kind of attitude. So I love when it is.
I don't know. I mean, that's their loss, isn't it?
I think so, because I think collaboration, showing somebody what you're doing, isn't taking away from anything. It just
Right.
helps somebody enhance or shift what they're doing.
Well,
all
it's like it's actually. I think first of all, I was a chamber musician, so that's a collaboration where there's three musicians. In our case was a trio, so violin, piano, cello, and we have the music there. And so then how do we figure out our version, our vision of what it was that the composer had put onto the page? And so that's a collaboration. We stop. I mean, literally, we work through things bar by bar sometimes, so that we know, here we push, here we pull, here we go louder, here we go softer, how much, how little. All of that has to be worked out ahead of time. And a spontaneous appearing performance is often very well calculated. And then, as we would perform it, this wonderful synergy would happen, is that especially after we'd maybe done it a few times and we're comfortable with our way of doing it, then new things would happen on the stage, and we would all mind meld, and we would all do something beautiful and all do something different at the same moment. And it was like, wow, did you hear that? And then we would always do that. It would be something that would be incorporated into future performances. So in terms of collaboration, I mean, it's like putting together an opera or putting together a theater production. You can't do it by one person. You have to have it. Even when somebody does a one-person show, they have a director and then they often have a costume person, and it's just for their one show. So it's always a collaboration, and that's how we as human beings channel into the world the best of the best is by collaborating with one another and learning and using our each individual talent to create a synergy of something better.
I love it because I love collaborating. I mean, I just think that there's so much depth and there's so many layers when you're collaborating because everybody's bringing something different to the party.
Right, exactly.
It's like everybody bringing a dish, so you have this most amazing buffet
right.
of talent.
And we as human beings really have an internal need to do that and to collaborate and to be with others because now with everybody being locked down, that's one of the things that makes it so difficult is that people just can't interact at the spiritual level that they're used to, because even if you just go into a store, you are entering into someone else's energy sphere, and that interaction is missing now for all of us when we can't go and interact with people normally.
And people are feeling it big time. They're just feeling that void, void of the other energies, void of the experience, whatever that experience might be.
Right.
Yeah, the COVID has really put an interesting twist on life as we knew it.
Yeah. Well, we're all here to learn lessons, so this is some sort of big lesson that we're all learning, and I think new things will come of it, and hopefully, in the long run, something good.
Well, I think that there is because people are learning to support each other. Where I think, in my opinion, people were really starting to become very autonomous, in what they're doing, and it was just they lived in their own bubble, and it was by themselves, and now it's a forcing to be considerate of other people. Because I'm always saying be considerate. You don't know what somebody else has. Wearing your mask will either protect you or protect somebody from something you might be carrying around. Even so much as like with the hoarding that happened at the beginning, people stopped hoarding because they realized other people do need supplies as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And so hopefully that will become more
part of the
way of things.
Of the cultural and spiritual life.
Yes. And we're all one and we take care of each other.
Right.
So that's what I'm feeling. Hang on one second, Andre. Everyone, we'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to talk some more with Endre Balogh about his sacred geometry, about his life, his music, and what's coming up next. Stay tuned.
Great.
All right, great job. We're all clear. Back in a couple minutes.
Thank you. Actually, I ordered your book, or Deirdre's book, The Not So Little Book of Surprises. So I'm looking forward to receiving that. And I didn't realize it was a big book.
Yeah, no, it's here, and it's got all kinds of I don't know what you can see, but that's a dark. But all of these are all,
I can't see the book because when you have a background, you sometimes
it flips in and out.
Yes.
Yeah. Here, I'll show you this front page here.
Oh wow. That's incredible. Is that Cleopatra? Or is that just a face? It looks sort of like Cleopatra.
Well, no, I mean it's just.
It's just a skull. Okay.
Yeah, the whole thing. Well, I see it slipping in and out, so it's not doing well. But you'll get the hang of it when you see it. You'll see what I mean. So.
Yeah. So it's. Don't you just love that these opportunities come into life and they're so synchronistic? It's not something you might have searched out, but they happen and. Then you're just so amazed by the outcome.
Yeah, exactly. It's fascinating how life works that way.
Once you're open and you just allow, it's amazing what happens when you raise your vibe. Is there anything I might have missed asking you before Because the last segment seems to be the shortest.
If we want to talk about my website and how people can buy things, but
We'll make sure we get on and do that.
uh-huh.
So I just want to make sure we hit all points with you.
Yeah, that's fine. Anything else is just for fun. So we're having a fun conversation.
That's it. Did you have a 17-minute video somewhere?
Well, yeah, that's I'm working on figuring out how to market that, and so that is the basis for the Synergeometry book. In that all of those were the first ones that she did. She added the so what that is. There's a violin piece that's called the Chaconne. It's by Bach. And many people consider it to be the greatest piece of music ever written for any instrument, and it's been orchestrated. It's a fantastic piece, but it's written for violin alone. And one of the reasons I think it's so great is because it is musical sacred geometry. And so I thought, well, since I'm making sacred geometry, I may as well meld the two. So I recorded that. I'm very proud of myself that I did it in one take, 17 minutes long. Wow. There's no edits. And it's something that very few violinists, or only the top level violinists, play anyway. And so I'm glad that I was able to do it. It was clearly channeled. And so then we added about these collection to go with the music. I'm working on maybe putting that up as a Vimeo rental on demand sort of thing, but I haven't figured out quite how to do that yet, so I can't advertise it because it isn't up there yet.
Okay.
I'll send you a link though. You can see it.
Perfect. Once again.
We are coming back here. Stand by.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt.
You are listening to Guided Spirit Conversations. To reach Marla Goldberg or her guest today, you are invited to call into the program at 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. If you'd rather send an email, the address is guidedspiritconversations@gmail.com. Now, back to this week's program.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, I'm here with Endre Balogh. And Endre was a child prodigy. Would that be correct in saying?
Well, that's what they said, so I won't argue too much.
He's a soloist with orchestras like the Berlin Philharmonic, Frankfurt Symphony, the orchestras of Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Seattle, Dallas, just to name a few. Endre has toured the world as a violinist of the Pacific Trio for 35 years. There's also another band you're also with, aren't you?
Well, now that's also something that I do is called. It's completely unrelated to that type of music. It's called Paris Chanson, Paris Singers, and there are three singers, and then we have a guitar. Well, one of the singers plays guitar. Drummer, bass player, keyboardist, and me. I'm kind of like what would be the lead guitar, perhaps. And we specialize in doing French and Russian and some other occasional the popular music, like Edith Piaf and Charles Aznavour and Enrico Macias and all of that. Those, especially those who've been in Europe, they know this music, and it's so much fun because it's something unlike anything I've ever done in my life before. I get to improvise. So I make up, it's always new, it's always a little different. Of course, there's certain set areas of each song, but I for a lot of the music I make up on the spot, and it's always different. And
I've watched your videos, and it looks fun. But
yeah,
before we get into any more of that, let's talk. It's charity shout out time, and I've got to get my charity shout out in. And your charity is Tov Women, and I know this is something that is near and dear to your wife,
right,
as well as you. You want to talk about it a little bit?
Well, she is interested in also in the spirituality, and she one of the things that she found fascinating is to explore the Hebrew text of the Bible, of the Torah. And so she learned biblical Hebrew, and she teaches biblical Hebrew and helps people to learn and explore the deep spirituality of the Torah through that methodology. And so she has a charity that helps to fund that process, and so people can go to, it's called Tov Woman, and I think you have the URL for that.
www.studytorah.com.
Studytorah.com, right?
So if you want to learn about a different religion or something else, this
Well,
is the place to go.
it's for all people. It doesn't matter their religion. It's really
an education.
Because the all of the three great religions, Islam and Christianity and Judaism first, and that they all basis themselves on the first 5 books of Moses, the Torah, and the biblical text is often. You can learn so many subtleties from the actual words and their how they work in the text. There's an enormous amount of it's endless, really. I mean, and so it's fascinating. If someone there's a number of Christians who learn this same process, and so it's a terrific venue for entering into the depths of that scripture and learning about it.
And to me, and I've been bat mitzvah twice, believe it or not.
Oh.
How did I do that? I don't know. But during one of my classes, there was Torah study, and I'll tell you, it's interesting. And I would think that's why there's Bible study classes for all religion, or Quran study, because there's so many nuances and so many underlying things and so many things that need explaining.
Yeah,
I know they did for me.
Yeah, well, the connections of the words and how the words are structured, they have infinite layers of meaning, and so it's a wonderful way to explore that.
So www.studytorah.com.
Yeah,
all
terrific.
right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Check it out. Help them out, because I think any education is a necessary education.
Uh-huh.
So even our personal growth is an education that's
right,
necessary.
of course. Well, that's what we're here to do. So
that's it. Well, some people don't have that belief system. They don't believe they're here to learn and to grow, and I mean, there's the spiritual aspect of it.
But that's their learning that they need to learn. So that's okay.
This is so true. Their non-learning is their learning.
Yeah, exactly.
And, some people are just resistant. So I love it when people look, like I had to be cracked open, and, it was just like, whoa. And my life has done a 180 since I started down the path.
Right.
And it's okay because I've been resistant.
That's what happens. So everybody's on their own path, and that's great.
And which it should be. We shouldn't be walking anybody else's path.
No,
it's our life. It's our.
Yeah. Well, we all hold. If I'm going to be philosophical for a second, we all have a little chunk of light that is specific to us, and it's our process to try to bring that piece of light back to the source. And so that's what I do. That's what you do. That's what we all are doing, whether we know it or not.
That's a great way of putting it. So people who are atheists, who don't believe or think that metaphysical or spiritual, because it's not their belief system, doesn't exist, or it's phooey, it's not. And it goes to everybody because we're all part of one.
Right.
We're all part of the one.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk further about some of your experiences. What was your most, the biggest aha epiphany experience you had in your spiritual path? Or it could be in any path.
Well,
that would happen when you were doing something.
Obviously in life we have struggles. We have, when our son passed away, that was probably the most difficult thing that any parent has to go through, and coping with that. I had to draw on what I had learned already, and then of course it was a learning experience to learn new things, and so that would be, when you get hit over the head that way, it is, you can't help but learn from it. I mean, if you're going to say what was the biggest experience, I learned from that more than anything else, how to cope with it, but and bringing myself to that coping process, which is what I think resulted in the sacred geometries on one level. There are others. I was thinking about it this morning, how I approached that grief and everything. There's some people. There's a wonderful organization. It's called Compassionate Friends, which is for people parents who've lost children. But I went onto their website, and there were people there who were 25, 30 years later after their child had passed away, and they were writing these tearful. They were still mired in grief, and I said, "Oh my God, I can't live that way. It would be terrible." And so I found other ways to cope with it, because I say it's wonderful for someone, however they cope with that. That's great, but it wasn't my way to do it, and so I started making sacred geometries. There's another website that I found, which was called the Prayer Wave. These were run by a Christian lady, Christine Duminiak, and they're very Christian, but I would post up my experiences, and other people would post theirs, and so by helping other people, I helped myself, and so. So that was my way of going through it, and then of course, as I said, the sacred geometry process sort of evolved, and I know my son helps with that somehow, and so that was the process of the biggest cracking open, if you want, of you mentioned that as that's what happened. None of these sacred geometries would exist were it not for that.
It's amazing what comes out of it. It's almost like the phoenix rising out of the ashes. We
Absolutely.
You're having a very traumatic time, and yet something beautiful is made from it.
Yeah. Well, it depends a lot on one's attitude, because your tips and tricks. I mean, the biggest tip for happiness is that you have to make the choice to be happy. That's it. Unless you choose. Now, obviously, if somebody has a medical issue where they're depressed and you need medication, that's one thing. But other than that, one has to make the choice to be happy or not, and that's how you do it.
Well, it's true. And well, not everybody sees it that way, but.
Well, I know they don't, but I'm thinking, for instance, of Abraham Lincoln. He said the same thing. He had a terrible life. He had the Civil War. His wife was a manic depressive. He lost 2 of his children. I mean, he says you can only be as happy as you choose to be. So that's
following the words of Abraham Lincoln, right?
Yeah, right.
Endre, thank you so much. This hour has just zipped by. It has been such a pleasure and an honor to have you with me today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone at Voice America for everything you do to get this show on and aired. And I want to thank Teresa and Bridget, my assistants. I want to tell you about my YouTube channel. So if you want to see this interview, go to my YouTube channel, Guided Spirit Conversations, where you can subscribe, and make a review about the show. And then you won't miss any of the most amazing people that are coming on, like Endre here. And I want to also remind you that my sacred journal, which I'll pull up here, is now available at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. And it's a support tool to my sacred, my effing long journey to loving myself, a guide to a shorter path. So please check into that. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day, out of your life, to listen to what were shared today, which was amazing in my opinion. And please check out Endre's website at www.endresart, and that's ENDRESART.com. Check out studytorah.com. Check out that, because it could be something you're looking for. And I want to thank you again for being a part of the show.
Thank
Endre,
you.
again, thank you.
It's my pleasure.
And until next week, I send you love. I send you blessings. I send you gratitude. Please be safe. Please be socially considerate of others. This is a crazy time, and I know you wouldn't want to know that you've given somebody something, or somebody inadvertently gave you something, like this terrible virus. So please be socially considerate. Till next week, take care.